Hey guys, it's Sam for Rizom-Lab, and in this RizomUV Basics tutorial, we're going to be exploring the various welding, unwrapping and optimizing tools. So let's head on over to RizomUV and take a look. Okay, so first things first, we need to load a model. So let's go to Files, Load with UVs, and we're going to choose our forward controls. These models will be provided to you via a link in the description of this video. Something else to note is that I'm using the C4D control scheme, as I've mentioned in previous videos, so just take that in mind. Okay, so before we begin, I just want to bring your attention to these viewport focus options up here. So first we have center selection, which is shortcut F, and we have center all, which is A. So I'm going to switch over to island mode by pressing F4, and I'm going to choose this section of our model. Now, if I were to zoom out here and then press F, center selection, this part of the model that we have selected will be framed and focused in on. So let's zoom out again. And this time I'm going to press A. This actually centers all of our object, despite the fact that I've got this selection. I personally tend to use center selection via the F key because with nothing selected, if I clear my selection and zoom out and press F, everything is framed or focused in on, but with the selection and I press F, just that part is focused in on. So the F shortcut tends to meet all of my needs. These focus options also work in the UV view too. So if I select this part of the model and press F, it is now focused. And if I clear this selection and press F again, everything within my tile is focused. So let's focus our 3D view too and move on. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the welding tools up here, and as you can see we've got our weld icon, and if we look in this drop down we've got some other weld options here, and to make things a little bit more visible I'm going to be dragging these into our panel. Okay, so we're going to be working with this arm section of our model, so to isolate it I'm going to double middle mouse click over it and then press the I key. So now it's isolated. I'm also going to full screen our UV view just so we got a better view of it. Let's switch to edge mode, F2. I'm going to make this loop selection here. Not that one, this one. C to cut. Switch over to island mode. Select this top piece here. Hold tab and move this up. And switch back to edge mode with F2. And I'm just going to zoom in on this part of the model as well so we can get a better look. So first we're going to be looking at the Weld Tool, which is here, and its shortcut is W. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to select this edge here, double click for a loop selection, and I'm just going to press the shortcut for Weld W. You'll notice that our counterpart island at the bottom here was moved upwards to our selection, and then a weld occurred. So let's undo that and do it again, but this time selecting this loop here at the bottom. You can see our edge pair lines go to our counterpart edges, and this being our counterpart island. So notice how this top island will be moved down to the bottom island's location, and then a weld occurs. So pressing W again, and there you go. Let's undo. We can actually change this behavior of the counterpart island being moved before welding occurs. So if we go up to our seams attributes here, press our attributes button, at the top here we've got pre-aligned islands, and we can check this off. And now with our loop selection here, and we press W, notice how this top island, our counterpart island, was not moved down, but only the counterpart edge was moved to the location of our selection and then welded. So I'm going to undo that and turn our pre-aligned islands back on. Okay, let's move on to our next tool, which is Weld Island Cut, which is up here, and its shortcut is Shift W. To showcase this tool, I'm going to set up my island in a specific way. So I'm going to make a vertical cut here, press C to cut. Then I'm going to choose this loop selection here by double clicking, hold tab and move this to one side. I'm going to add to this selection by shift double clicking here, and I'm going to choose this edge here If I were to do a regular weld with this edge selection, you would expect this bottom island to be brought to our selection and this edge brought to this edge before a weld occurred. Let's take a look at what happens with our next welding tool, Weld Island Cut. As I said before, the shortcut for this is Shift W. So let's do that, Shift W. As you can see, only selected cuts on the interior of the island are welded, and selected edges that connected to separate islands are totally ignored. Let's undo this and move on to the next weld tool, which is Weld Islands. That's up here, and the hotkey is Control W. So first I'm going to add to my selection. I'm going to choose this side here, and I'm going to press Control W. Notice that Weld Islands welds across islands but completely ignores the internal island cut. So the inverse of the Weld Island Cut tool. So let's undo this. These welding tools can also be used in island mode too, so let's go through them quickly. I'm going to switch over to island mode, F4. Select our halves, zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to press the Weld Tool, W. Now this looks a little bit of a mess, and that's because in island mode with these two islands selected, every island that is associated with these islands or connected to them is now welded. So let's undo. Weld Island Cut, Shift W, and you can see that only the internal cut was welded there. So let's undo that. Weld Islands, Control W, and these islands are welded together. But if we clear our selection, you can see the internal cut was not welded. So let's remedy that by selecting the island and Shift W. Now that internal cut has been closed. Weld Islands is really useful for when you want to weld specific islands. So I'm going to select this island and this one here, Weld Islands with Control W. Now I'm going to press U to unfold and P to pack. So now that's done and it hasn't affected anything else in our tile. It's really important to understand all of these welding tools, as it will help prevent you from having to unflatten your entire object if you make a mistake with your cuts. Okay, so the last welding tool for us to look at is the magnet weld. To demonstrate this tool, I'm going to isolate this island. So let's select this, press I. I'm going to switch to edge mode, F2. I'm going to select all with Control A. Cut, switch back to island mode, F4, and now I've done this, each UV polygon is now actually a separate island. So if I select this, I can hold tab and move it out of the way, and you can see that each one of these polygon UVs is completely separate from its surrounding polygon UVs. So I'm going to Control A to select all of our polygon UVs, and then I'm going to press the magnet weld button, which is up here. And now if we clear our selection, we can see that everything is welded back together. You can see that all of the cuts of the island have been welded together because magnet weld is dependent on a distance threshold. So if I come up here to our attributes, we can see that we've got this magnet weld distance. This distance threshold can be used to determine what gets welded and what doesn't. In this case, everything was welded because each island's edges were within this threshold distance. Okay, so let's move on and explore some of the Unwrap Panel tools. I'm gonna go to Files, Load. We don't need to save this. And we're gonna load the male head OBJ. We're also gonna switch to Edge mode, F2, and we're gonna make our 3D view visible again. So let's make some seam selections here. So I'm gonna select this seam here, move around to the back, Control Select, and click all the way down to the bottom there. I'm going to make this cut by pressing C and U to unfold. This may not pack with the orientation you want, so if you go up to the packing attributes and have a look at the initial orientation here, you can change this to Y up to make sure that the Y direction in the 3D viewport matches the V direction in the UV viewport. I'm going to maximize our viewport again and zoom into the middle of our face here. Okay, so we have a few issues here, but let's start with the mouth and the eyes. The mouth hole here has overlapping UVs and is closed up. The eyes are partially closed and they actually overlap in the corners. If we get close enough here, you can see we've got some overlaps there. So to remedy this, I'm going to go up to our Unwrap panel and press the Attributes button and have a look at some of these options here. First of all, I'm going to turn on the Fill Gaps checkbox, hover my cursor over the island and press U again. You'll now see that the mouth and eyes are open without any intersecting UVs. This is because RizomUV temporarily fills these gaps with invisible UV polygons when unfolding, hence the name Fill Gaps. Alright, let's move on to the nose. You'll notice that it has these dark blue polygons. This indicates that we are looking at the back side of these UV polygons because they are flipped. So I'm going to turn on Prevent Flips. I'm also going to switch over to Polygon mode, F3. I'm going to select this nose area and I'm going to press the Unfold shortcut U. You can see now that these problematic flipped UVs have now been solved. Okay, moving on, let's load another example. Files, load, and we're going to load this forearm hand OBJ, bring back our 3D view. We're also going to turn off Prevent Flips and Fill Gaps, switch to Edge mode with F2, and we're going to start making a selection. So I'm going to double click this edge here, hold Shift, double click here. We can see it stops there. So I'm going to Shift select, Shift double click, move around the arm, Shift double click again, cut. Before I unfold, I'm going to go to Packing Attributes and I'm going to change this to Automatic, our initial orientation. Now I'm going to press U and I'm going to full screen our UV view. So let's zoom into this hand section here. And you can see we've got some overlaps with the fingers. And if I zoom right into the nail here, you can see that we've got this flipped UV polygon as well. So I'm going to go back to our Unwrap attributes and I'm going to turn on Prevent Flips and Prevent Overlaps. I'm going to hover the cursor over this island and press U. And then I'm going to press P. Now you see that there are no overlapping polygons on the fingers, and if I zoom into the nail where we had that flip polygon, it is no longer present. You may be wondering why these settings aren't just on by default, and that's because it adds computational complexity, and that's why they're optional. Okay, let's move on and talk about localized unfolding. So if I zoom into our thumb here and select all the edges and press U, you'll notice that only what was selected has been unfolded and that it hasn't affected the rest of the model. So let's undo that. The same is true for optimizing too. So with this selection, we can optimize by holding the O key. And again, the rest of the model is not affected. So I'm going to clear this selection and talk about the unfold and optimize brushes, because we can actually do localized unfolding with these tools too. So if I go up here and select our unfold brush, I can actually unfold this thumb just by painting over it. Undo this and switch over to our optimize brush and we can do the same thing. Let's get back to our select tool. We can also do localized unfolding with constraints too. So if we go up to our Unwrap panel in this drop down, I'm going to drag out our constraints here. So we've got constrain horizontally, constrain vertically, unconstrain edges, and constrain edges aligned. So I'm going to choose this top edge here, double click and constrain horizontally. I'm going to choose this one here and constrain vertically. And then I'm going to make this edge selection here. And I'm going to unfold with the hotkey U. Clear that selection and pack. Notice how our constraints have been respected without affecting the lower part of the model. Okay, next we're going to look at constrained edges aligned. This allows us to constrain edges but not in a vertical or horizontal manner. So I'm going to choose this edge here and then Control Shift to path select down to here. I'm going to constrain aligned this edge, hover over the island and press O to optimize, and then P to pack. Notice how our selected edges are now straight but not horizontal or vertical. This is because RizomUV evaluates the angles of the selected edges and averages them into a straight line. Okay, next we're going to look at pinning, and for that we're going to reload our head model. So let's go File, Load with UVs this time, and load our head. I'm also going to dock our pinning tools to the Unwrap panel. So let's drag out Pin and Unpin. Okay, so let's make some edge selections. I'm going to double click this one here. Let's zoom in a little bit. And Shift select on this edge, double click, and we're going to hit the Pin button. Notice how the vertices along our edge selection have now turned black. This signifies that these vertices are pinned, meaning they are locked in place. I can demonstrate this by going to our drag tool and then dragging some of our UVs around. You'll notice that those edges that we pinned are locked in place and are not moving. Let's undo that. Go back to our select tool. Alright, so I'm going to unpin these points. Control A to select all edges. Press the unpin button. Those pinned vertices are gone. The last tool to talk about is Live Optimize. This tool executes optimization in real time around a selection of points, edges or polygons in order to minimize distortion during transformation. So I'm going to set a few things up in order to showcase this. The first thing I'm going to do is pin some points. It's important to do this when using Live Optimize to achieve meaningful results, and I'll come back to this in a few minutes. So what I'm going to do is go into polygon mode. I'm going to loop select around this eye here, so double click on that edge, shift double click around that one, and then I'm going to shift double click around here. Now I'm going to use the plus button on my numpad to grow this selection, and I'm going to do this 3 times. Then I'm going to pin this selection, so we have this. I'm going to go to my Unwrap panel and I'm going to turn off prevent flips and prevent overlaps, as these are no longer needed. And I'm going to hit our transform tool and lock the transform panel so it is ever present even when I'm switching between different tools, and zoom out. So let's go back to our select tool, and you can see that part of our transform panel is still here because I locked it. And I'm going to make an edge selection at the top left hand side here. Oh, that's polys. Let's switch back to edge mode and select edges. So to demonstrate what happens normally, I'm going to hold the space bar and I can left click my mouse and drag to move these edges. You can see that we've got a bunch of stretch in here, and that is because this movement is absolute. It is only moving the selected edges. So let's undo that. I'll do the same thing with scale. So holding the space bar down, I'm going to click my middle mouse button in and drag, and I can scale this down or up. And you can see the effect that that's having with this stretching here. Let's undo that, and we can do the same with rotation by holding the space bar and right clicking the mouse button and dragging. And you can see what kind of effect that's having there. Okay, let's undo this. And we're going to come down to Live Optimize in our transform panel and enable it. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. So holding space, let's move these. And you can see that we're getting a very different result there. The vertices around our selection are being adjusted to minimize distortion. So let's do this with scale as well. And you can see that not only are the areas around our selection adjusting, but also other parts of the model too. Do it with rotation and undo. If we go back to our Live Optimize tool, you'll notice that we've got this iteration slider here. Higher iterations will get more accurate results, but it also means more computation, thus slower performance. So let's crank this up to 4 and do the same thing again. You can see that this time it's a little bit slower, but it gives you a more accurate result. Just going back to what I said earlier about the importance of having pinned points, let's unpin these points. So let's make a edge selection and unpin. And now we're going to make this selection again with Live Optimized enabled and move again. You can see that the entire island is coming along for the ride. And if I do the same thing with scale, it's not so bad, but rotation and the entire island is trying to come along too. Let's undo to get our pin back. There we go. And the last thing we've got is this elastic mode here. I'm going to put our iterations back down to 1 to make things quicker. And I'm going to use our drag tool here. So without elastic mode on, I'm going to drag, and you can see that what kind of effect this has. Let's undo this. Now with elastic mode on, I'm going to do the same thing, and you can see that it's a lot different. It's got a rubber-like quality to it, and if I move around the edges here, you can see that it's kind of trying to return to its original state, especially over this side of the model when I'm manipulating on this side. So that's what the elastic mode does. With this off, you get more of a clay-like response, and with this on, you get more of a rubber band response. So that's it, guys. That's everything I wanted to go over in this video. I hope you found it helpful. The next video will be covering packing, and I'll see you there. If you enjoyed our video, please like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell for video updates. You can check us out on social media, Discord, and our website, links in the description. And if you're looking for more RizomUV content, you can choose one of these videos on screen. That's it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.